Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live show. Just got back from Lakers Media Day, where every player on the roster spoke with us. A lot to get into about Luka and LeBron and Austin Reeves and DeAndre Ayton, Marcus Smart, Rui Hachimura, and the rest of the group. But before we get into it, I wanted to give a quick shout out to the Late Night Gang for helping me reach 30,000 subscribers on the channel. I had set the challenge about a week or so ago to hit 30K before the season starts, and I hit it within a matter of a few days. So I appreciate you guys for subscribing. Maybe some of you, about 40% of you watch consistently and are not yet subscribed. So some of you converting over to subscribers, I appreciate it. So shout out to the Late Night Gang, shout out to the chat. And already seeing the Jake LaRavia comments, nothing like that. But wanted to also let you guys know that on October 1st, on Wednesday, I will be dropping channel memberships for the first time. Been working through, going to have 3 tiers and some fun names for the tiers, finalizing what's going to be going into each tier right now, and going to have some emojis and stickers and badges and all that stuff in addition to the perks. So just wanted to promote that quickly. That will be dropping on Wednesday. I know many of you have been asking about that for months, and it is finally here and finally ready to launch that. So let's just get into it. Shout out to everybody in the chat right now. Kwabena, Sam, MJ, Omaris, Justin, Mark. What up, everybody? So want to talk through typical format here, talk through a few takeaways from Media Day, and then get into the Q&A portion. I want to start with Luka because, of course, everything now with the Lakers revolves around Luka. And I want to cut through, like, on Media Day, there's going to be a lot of noise, and there's going to be a lot of how was your offseason, this and that. And I don't like focusing on that stuff. I like focusing on the stuff that actually matters, or at least matters to me. And so with Luka, I think the things that I took away were, in terms of the actual changes in the physical nature of basketball for him, at least what he said, was that he felt less fatigued and a little bit quicker at EuroLeague. And I think those are two important developments, right? If Luka can be in better shape and just be able to play more and be able to play longer at a higher level, or at an even higher level, I think that's a big development for the Lakers. And then being a little bit quicker, like I did the film breakdown, and he looked quicker on film, and his ability to attack bigs off the dribble, attack double teams, get to the rim, get to the paint. I think those were all positive developments. So the fact that Luka confirmed that, I think that is encouraging. I said he didn't work out specifically on any facet of his game necessarily, that he tends to like to work out more in 3-on-3, 4-on-4, 5-on-5 game environments. It kind of reminds me of LeBron, where LeBron will often say he prefers to work in scrimmaging or like group style workouts rather than individual style workouts, or trying to play one-on-one or something like that. But he did say just overall that the getting in being in better shape was his primary focus of the offseason, and that is the facet of his game that has changed the most. And then he had a ringing endorsement for JJ Redick. That was one of the final questions he was asked. He said he loves playing for him. He's excited to play for him again this season, and that hopefully JJ is his coach until the end of his career, which, if you're a Lakers fan, you love to hear that. Luka already projecting out the rest of his career as a Laker, but then also the ringing endorsement of wanting to be coached by JJ for the rest of his career. And I think that was an under discussed aspect of the JJ extension when I originally spoke about it after Media Day with Rob and JJ last week. Like, you have to think that this is with the blessing of a Luka, and that Luka is going to be here for the foreseeable future, potentially the rest of his career. Rob's going to be here for the foreseeable future. And now we have the clarity with JJ's contract that he was extended a couple of years into, or through rather, 2030. So I think that was, I think, very notable of just having that type of endorsement from Luka, and just having that clarity that, like, yes, Luka is fully on board with JJ and wants him to be his long-term coach. Takeaway number 2 for me was we got to go to LeBron now. We did not get clarity on his future, and I was hoping to get a little bit more clarity. He did note that he's going to retire sooner than later, but that could be this season, after this season. It could be a couple more years, 3 more years, whatever. So we didn't really get the clarity. He did joke that he's not going to wait for Bryce, and that Bryce is on his own timeline, and LeBron, that's not going to be a factor in how much longer he decides to play. Did state that he doesn't know how much longer he's going to play. So again, we just don't really have clarity on that. He was asked, and I give Andy Kamenetsky credit for asking him this question. He was asked about the Rich Paul statement and whether he feels like the team did enough to be as competitive as he had wanted. And he said yes. It wasn't the best endorsement of the roster. He didn't state like, oh, we're championship contenders, or like, I really believe in, like, it was a little bit toned down, I will say, compared to what it could have been, or if he was really just talking through, just trying to kind of hype it up the most he could have. I felt it was a little toned down, but make of that what you will. Said he's still motivated to play, and the process of trying to be great, the process of a season. He even referenced like the cliche playing Tuesday night in a random city that he doesn't necessarily want to play in, but like just he doesn't know how many more of those nights he has. So he wants to enjoy the process, and also mentioned being motivated by playing with Luka. And then I asked him like, what. I'll say that there were not a lot of basketball questions, and that's always how I try to come at these things, is like asking basketball questions so we could learn a little bit more about a player's role or what their vision is for the season or whatnot. So I asked LeBron, like, one consistent thing with LeBron is every summer he has a skill or a facet of the game that he tries to focus on. And so I asked him what that was this year, and he joked that it was his golf swing, and that he was trying to work on that. And we saw several videos throughout the offseason of LeBron golfing, and I guess he picked up a golf club for the first time on July 2nd and has been trying to perfect the craft of that. But then once we had that little banter and joked about it a bit, he got into his catch and shoot ability, and that being a big thing with playing off of the ball, not only with Luka, but he referenced Austin and Gabe and Marcus Smart and even Bronny when Bronny plays, and just noting how many ball handlers they have, and that he will still have the ball some, but he is going to be playing off the ball a little bit more. And looking at the last couple of seasons, LeBron has been a 42+% catch and shoot guy. He was 42% last year, 47% the year before. So this has been a positive, and it was a big jump because 3 years ago he was at 35%, I believe, 35, 36. So that's a pretty big jump to go from 35, 36 to 47 to 42. Those are elite catch and shoot numbers. So he's already really good as a catch and shoot threat. Shot 37.5%. Against Minnesota in the first round. So if he can take that to another level, maybe even, or somewhere in between the 42 and 47 in the regular season, and maybe bump up the playoffs to closer to 40, like that's elite stuff that will really make, like, you just can't help off LeBron anymore the way that you used to. Like, there was a point early in his career, go back to the 2007 finals, teams are San Antonio's going under on pick and rolls and inviting LeBron to shoot threes, to shoot pull-up jumpers. You can't do that anymore. He's too good of a shooter. And he had a funny quote as well about aging like fine wine. But really, I think the big thing was like him talking about playing off the ball, playing next to so many ball handlers, and that giving us a little glimpse into how the Lakers want to run their offense. Takeaway number 3 for me was I thought Deandre Ayton had the best quotes of the presser, and I thought he had a really good intro press conference and really embraced being a Laker, being in LA, what it means to play for this franchise, what it means to be a center in particular, like just the lineage of all the centers, the great first ballot Hall of Fame centers that have played in LA for the purple and gold. So a couple quotes here I'm going to read quickly from DeAndre. One, pressure is a privilege, and I'm in the right place to be where everything counts and the fans want us to win, and I'm here to add to the legacy. So that was a really big theme with him, with his answers, was pressure is a privilege, and like, I'm embracing the pressure. So I thought it was nice to see that from him, just knowing how important he's going to be for the Lakers this season and the scrutiny that he's going to be under. And then I think that the second quote, what was really the money quote here, where he said, "It's the biggest opportunity I can say of my career. Some people say it's my last leg. Some people say it's my last chance. This is an opportunity I can truly say I'm not going to take for granted. It's almost like a wounded animal. I feel it. I feel all the tension, and I know where I'm at. I've been in the gym every day. And like I said, I'm somewhere where it counts now. And I'm happy that everybody gets to see it. And I'm happy where, as a player, as myself, I get a chance to prove something big on a big stage. So I will also give him credit because he said later in his availability that a lot of this comes down to action and not just saying the right thing, but actually doing the right thing, and that he could say the right thing, but he has to actually go there, go out and execute and take action and do it. But in terms of saying the right thing, Deandre Ayton has been saying the right thing. And that's only, I don't even know if that's half the battle, but that's some percentage of the battle. And to see him operate this way and have this self-awareness and have hear the noise, but also embrace it and be like, all right, some people are saying I might be out of the league if I flame out as a Laker, if I don't produce, this could be my last chance. To hear that and to have that self-awareness, I thought that was really encouraging. And I think that's just a really big development for him as a Laker and his journey. So I think DeAndre Ayton just nailed, again, part of it is just, you can say the right things. It's a different thing entirely to actually do the right thing. But so far, from at least what we've seen, it feels like he's passed every test up to this point. Takeaway number 4 was no clarity on the 5th starter, but it was interesting to hear Rui and Marcus both talk about it. So both players said they don't care whether they come off the bench. Marcus was like, whether I come off the bench or whether I start, I'm going to make a big impact. I'm ready to. He also had some similar quotes to DeAndre Ayton about just this being a big opportunity for him and feeling like he slept on because of the last couple of years, being injured and playing in losing situations, that he feels like he has a lot to prove as well. And then Rui, I asked Rui the starting question, and he noted that, he said he doesn't care because it ultimately comes down to JJ and what JJ wants to do, and he's the coach and he's the decision maker. But Rui noted that he thinks minutes are important. So that's maybe just looking at it, if we take a step back and analyze that, maybe that's the middle ground that the Lakers find if they do end up going in the smart direction is, okay, Rui, you're going to come off the bench, but your minutes are going to be unaffected, or you're going to be far and away the highest playing, which I expect, regardless of who comes off the bench, Smart or Rui. I do expect that player to be at least in the mid to high 20s minutes wise, and be far and away the most prominent bench player. But I thought Rui mentioning the minutes was interesting because that is, I think, a big part of it, right? It's if you typically moving to the bench also comes with reduced minutes, and if he does move to the bench, or whether it's Smart or whatever, as long as that player is maybe playing 26, 27, 28 minutes a night, that's maybe a way to sell that player on that vision and taking that step back. And then Rui did note, though, and this has been a consistent, whenever Rui talks about his role or starting or whatnot, he noted that he has chemistry and continuity with the rest of the starting group. And that's largely true, right? Because especially with LeBron and Austin, he's now started with those guys for a while. With Luka, it's of course a smaller sample size. Luka, only played 28 games last year as a Laker, and Rui missed several of those with the injury he had. And then DeAndre Ayton, he has yet to play with. So that's partially true, but largely true on the LeBron Austin front. But I thought that was an interesting. He kind of was framing it I don't really care, I just care minutes and as long as I'm playing a lot. But I do have a lot of chemistry with this group, and so that was the little bit of, I think, Rui kind of making his case to be the starter. But we'll see. I still don't have clarity on what the starting group is going to look like. Then last one before I rattle off a couple random things. Adou Thiero has not been cleared to resume basketball activity, or I don't really know what that means yet. And I wish I missed his part of media day. So I wish I was there to ask a follow-up, and I regret that now. But so he said he's not been fully cleared to participate in training camp, but he has been training and working out. And I've talked about that on here before, that I'd heard he'd looked good in training and working out, but I didn't typically that they're not doing as much scrimmaging earlier in the off season because they just try to be careful with that stuff. So I guess it's sounding like he's not scrimmaging and he's not going to take part in the physical portions of training camp. Would love to get some more clarity from JJ on that, which hopefully we'll get tomorrow at the first day of camp. But I will say, like, if again, and I'm not sure how much scrimmaging or whatnot he has done throughout the summer now at this, maybe none since summer league. And again, I would like to get some more clarity on that. This is becoming concerning. Like, he did not play in summer league. He now has swelling in his knee and is not playing or starting camp. And this is becoming something that is lingering that is unfortunate, because I think while I project him currently outside the rotation, I think his skill set is desperately needed, and there is a path to him becoming a back-end rotation player for this team. So, and just long-term, like, you just never know with a, like, how many times have we seen with Lakers and knee contusions and how long guys end up missing, and they end up missing a full season, they end up missing multiple months when it's originally like a multi-week projected absence. So there's just some concern here with this whole situation, and we'll obviously continue to track it and monitor it and see where it goes. But the fact that he missed summer league and now is projected to miss the start of training camp is obviously not a positive sign. And then random things, I thought Austin looked buffer slightly, like just his arms looked a little bit filled out. He was listed at 210, so I think he's put on 5-10 pounds or so. Jackson said he gained 20 pounds, which I thought, like, that one, I couldn't tell as much with him in terms of, like, I don't think he visibly looked 20 pounds heavier, but he did look a little bit heavier. So that's notable with Jackson. And I think that will help with post defense and rebounding. And we'll see if it affects his athleticism at all. Maxey, Kleba and Jared Vanderbilt are both fully healthy and cleared. So that's good for both of those guys. Maxey coming off of the surgery earlier in the year. Jared Vanderbilt first off-season healthy in a couple seasons. So I think that's encouraging for both of those guys. And then I watched, so I went back and watched every interview just to make sure I didn't miss anything in my notes. And then I also watched the Spectrum interviews. And JJ spoke to Spectrum because they didn't have the setup for the Rob JJ presser. So he had to do his media day obligations with Spectrum and ESPN LA. And the one, like, we finally got a kernel of something about the basketball side from JJ that I desperately tried to get on media day, that where he said he wants to play hit-ahead basketball, which was a big theme for them last year in terms of you get a rebound or the other team scores, it's pushing the ball, trying to get out in transition, early offense as quickly as possible. And he said if they can't get out in transition, whether off of a rebound or an inbound, then he wants to get into their first action with a primary ball handler, which presumably would be Luka, LeBron, or Austin, or depending on the lineup, maybe Marcus or Gabe, within 18 or 19 seconds. And he was like, and this is something he referenced last year as well, but looking at points per possession, the best offenses in the league, the earlier they get into their first action, that has a correlation with how good their offense is and their offensive success. So I thought that was an interesting thing to find, like, and he's talked about championship shape, and that's been a big theme that a lot of players spoke about. A lot of players spoke about playing off of the ball around Luka and Austin and LeBron. But this was the first thing that JJ really said basketball-wise that I think could translate to what they're going to try and do in training camp and early in the preseason. And then the final thing before we get into the Q&A, Jake LaRavia does not look like me. I'm tired of it. I'm sick and tired of people calling him my twin. But let's get into the Q&A here. Shout out to Norma, aka my mom. Thank you for being here. Please remember to subscribe, share, and hit the like button. Yes, let's get those likes up, those subscribes up. Sky Falcon 5 says Hayes did look bigger. He did look bigger. Like 20 pounds is a lot of weight. Now he was so thin that maybe, like he did have a lot of weight to gain, but I guess like 20 pounds might not sound like much or might sound like much depending on what you guys think. But yeah, I guess I saw maybe like 10 pounds. Live Free says he does actually, now that you mentioned it, talking about LaRavia. Ashik says Thiero should be clear to play in a week, I believe. Was there a report on that? I did not see that, but if that's true, then that's good news. I mean, I saw his. Okay. So ESPN reported that. I mean, the one thing I'll say is how many times have we heard different versions of a player's supposed to be back by a certain amount of time. I had missed the ESPN report, but we'll see. Mistra, Jovan, this feels like a championship to you. It does to me, not on paper necessarily, but vibes. Good. I like that breakdown there because I would agree that on paper, I don't feel like this is a championship roster. I've been on record stating that I have real concerns with the defensive end. And I think historically, you tend to have to be a top 10 offense and top 10 defense. I see the top 10 offense, top 10 offensive potential with this group. I think there's top 5 or top 3 offensive potential with this group. The defensive end, it is really hard for me with the constructed group to see a top 10 defense. I've referenced this before, but they had the 20-4 stretch last year, which preceded the Luka trade, included the Luka trade, and then continued about a month or so past the Luka trade. But outside of that 20-4 stretch, when they had the league's best defense, which again, 24 games, the other 58 games, including a stretch before and a stretch after, they were bottom 10 defense in both stretches. So part of that, a large chunk of that was with AD. They were still a bottom 10 defense, but then a chunk of that was once LeBron and Rui got injured. And so there's maybe some noise within some of that, but seeing their defense struggle in the playoffs, it's hard for me to I think DeAndre Ayton is an upgrade over Jackson Hayes. I think Marcus Smart is an upgrade over Dorian Finney-Smith. I think Jake LaRavia is an upgrade over not having really a Jake LaRavia type coming off the bench, or if you want to compare him to Dalton, then that's a major defensive upgrade. So I think on paper they are a better defense, but just looking at their top defenders compared to just listing out the top defenders for an OKC or a Houston or just go down, Minnesota, those teams just have much better top end defenders. And so I think that's my one concern in terms of them being a championship threat, I guess. But if they make the right trade, if they can somehow keep Rui and get an Andrew Wiggins or get that type of wing defender in there, I think that's where they really that was my, did a mailbag a few weeks ago saying that I think they're a trade away from being a bona fide contender right there on that OKC level. So, but that was on paper though. The vibes were great. So that's where and with Luka being potentially the best player in the league or MVP, LeBron being a top 10 guy, maybe Austin takes another half step or step. Smart's healthy, he fits. Ayton's healthy, he buys in. Jake LaRavia continues to develop. Maybe Vando and Gabe bounce back to their prior production. You can see, JJ takes a step in year 2. You can see the outline of a really good team that wins 50 plus games, is the top 3 seed again, and is a real contender. So I'm not saying that's not possible. I'm just, but based on vibes, I thought the vibes were great and everyone was saying the right stuff. And sometimes that is, as I said earlier, part of the battle. And so far, so good. Ruman said, I thought Luka sounded more assertive and confident than he ever has before. Yeah, Luka was great. He said he missed the media. He said he's looking forward to interviews. And of course, he's joking around and that's his dry sense of humor. But I thought Luka was in great spirits and had a lot of really good things to say. Ken Carter, Jovan, name the 4 to 5 players that you feel should be moved for 3 two-way glue guys. I don't know if they need to move 4 to 5 players, but I think the obvious trade candidates I think would be Gabe Vincent, Maxi Kleba, and Dalton Connect. I think those are the 3 most obvious trade candidates on the roster. You could throw in Rui. I think Rui, it's going to be a high bar to trade him. They really like Rui. They would like to keep him longer term. So I think it would have to be a longer term piece who's better and or fits better next to Luka, particularly defensively. But I think they're going to try to do everything they can to keep Rui longer term, or at least have keep him through the season and then see how the rest of the season goes, and then have that optionality. And who knows, maybe they have a couple of days here to figure out potential extension. But I would say those are the 4 names that come to mind. Otherwise, I don't I mean, you could swing bigger and try to move Austin, but I don't like they want to keep Austin. And I also thought the thing with Austin that I've been trying to tell people since January has just been this dude's about to get paid. And we had the report in The Athletic today from Dan Wojcicki saying that, talking to team and league sources, that Austin's projected to make at least 35, if not more. And some people are pegging it in the $40 million range. So again, I continue to say, like, I think people are sleeping on the contract Austin's going to get. And also, you don't pay a guy $35 to $40 million to be a bench player. That's just not how the NBA works. That's not how these things, like, that's just not how it works. So you could disagree, and we don't have to get into the whole Austin thing. I'm just stating that like, I mean, they could aim higher, but I don't see that happening as things stand. So I think Gabe, Maxey, and Dalton are probably the three guys. Lego Tortoise Builder, Jovan, which players stand out about looks the best to you after watching Media Day besides Luka? I would note, I thought Austin looked good. I think Jackson looked good. I think LeBron looks a little like trimmer and leaner. I think LeBron looked really good, and maybe he's slimming down a bit to play more on the perimeter defensively or whatever. So I think those are probably, like, everybody always looks their best, I guess, to start the season, right? Like, ideally you're coming into camp in shape, and that was a big theme that multiple players referenced, that JJ would talk to them about championship shape and all that. So I think everybody looked good for the most part. There wasn't anyone I was like physically concerned with, other than I guess Adou. But I would say Austin and Jackson looked a little buffer, and LeBron looked a little leaner. So I guess those would be the other three. Ruman says, we base all our thinking on this end, or at this end of the season, on hoops math and probability, but the contenders and winners at the other end are often totally unexpected. I would say yes and no, because I think OKC was the best team on paper. I think most people last year, the conventional wisdom was OKC and Boston were the two best teams in the league. They were going to meet in the finals, and their worst, like, OKC from wire to wire was a historically dominant team, won 68 games, did have some stretches in the playoffs where they were vulnerable, but ultimately prevailed, got to the finals, won the title. Boston had Tatum go down. I think they still probably lose that series regardless of Tatum's availability, but there were, of course, stretches during the regular season and even in the playoffs where they looked like the team we thought they were. So I do think basketball is, like, typically the sport that is the most chalk and the most predictable. Of course, you can't predict injuries, you can't predict trades, so there will be variables that change that. But to your point, like, no one predicted Indiana going on the run that they went on, so Indiana does buck the trend in sort of the chalk nature of the NBA, where they beat Boston, they beat New York, they almost beat OKC. I think Halliburton doesn't go down Game 7, who knows what happens. Like, I think OKC still probably wins, but it's probably a very close game that goes down to the final few possessions. So I agree with you to an extent, but I think barring like two of their three best players going down, I think we could pencil in OKC for the 1 seed and 60 plus wins. Like, I don't think that, I think that's pretty predictable, and they're young, they're deep, they're loaded. Like, I think they're in a really good spot. Sam mentioned, yeah, Maxey, that's fair. Maxey looked bulked up. Like, I guess I had seen the photos. It's fair to compare him to the previous version of seeing him in person. I'd already seen the offseason photos. So, Maxey also looked a bit bigger. Kane Carter, Jovan, do you think Jake LaRavia might make it easier for the front office to move Dalton? I do. I think they're in sort of a similar role, like different players overall, but Lakers need shooting. That's one of, I think, the on paper weaknesses of the supporting cast, and having guys like Rui and Jake and Dalton who can be above average to really like good to great shooters is important around Luka and LeBron and Austin. So I mean, ultimately, like, I think Jake's more of a 3-4 and Dalton's more of like a 2-3, but they are just based on, I think there's a clear top 6. And then I've talked about there being a 7th man competition with Jake, Gabe, and Vando. That takes you to 9. And then you're talking also about a backup center, which is probably the 10th guy. So Dalton, I do think Jake is on Dalton's corner a little bit as the bench shooter who can get hot and space the floor and like swing a quarter, a half, a game. By like we've seen Jake do it against the Lakers. He's had several big games against the Lakers over the last couple of years in Memphis. So I think that there are some like general similarities with their games in terms of the player archetype. Like I think Dalton is more of a natural scorer / shooter. Jake is a little bit more of a jack of all trades guy who is defending multiple guys. He can rebound, he could pass, he could dribble. Like he could do a little bit of everything. But in general, I think you can make that generalization of they are somewhat similar. Angelo, I don't see a question here, but I appreciate the super chat. Thank you. Ashik says, not really discussed enough, but honestly blessed that a lot of our role players understand that they're just role players. Yes. Gabe, Jake, Smart, and DA all stress that point. 100% agree. I think this is, I'm big, like I think for those of you who have followed me or watch, listen, whatever, to me for a while, know, like I'm really big on self-awareness with players. And that is my basketball ethos and philosophy and what I believe in and subscribe to is players having self-aware. Like I think that's the key. Every championship, like, and you could frame it different ways, right? Like you could call it sacrifice or camaraderie or together. But like I think everyone has to have an element of self-awareness of knowing this is my skill set. These are my strengths. These are my weaknesses. This is what I'm being asked to do with this team. And part of that is the front office. When you are acquiring such players, whether it's the draft or trades or free agency, communicating clearly what the expectations are. It's on the coaching staff when they have those initial conversations, and then throughout the summer and training camp and the preseason, making sure you're being congruent with the message that you're sharing and being explicit and clear with your expectations. And then it's also on the leaders of the team to make sure everyone's buying in and on the same page. So I think so far, again, everyone has said the right things, and sometimes that's just lip service and sometimes it goes away quickly, especially in a situation like this where there's so many players in contract situations, right? Austin's in a contract year. LeBron's in a contract year. Rui's in a contract year. Deandre Ayton, Marcus Smart are effectively in contract years. So a lot of the key players on Gabe, Maxey, a lot of the key players here are in contract situations where their NBA futures depend on how they perform. Their NBA futures depend on the role they have, right? Like there will, like, whether Jackson Hayes or Maxi Kleber is the backup center will impact those guys' next deals and their futures in the NBA. If Jake LaRavia beats out Gabe Vincent and Jared Vanderbilt, that's going to affect trade value. That's going to affect Gabe's next contract. Like that's going to have a ripple effect across multiple layers of this situation. So there's a lot at stake right now. It's really important that everybody buys in and understands their role. And I think, at least again, based on what we've seen and what we know players are talking about, and everyone's had the self-awareness, and there's been a lot of off-ball talk, and that's important because the ball is going to go through Luka, then to a lesser extent, LeBron and Austin, and then another drop-off to Smart and Gabe, and then a major drop-off to anybody else. So if you're not in that initial bucket of the top 4 to 5 ball handlers, you're probably not going to be handling the ball that much, and you need to either be finishing or spacing the floor and catching and shooting. Or cutting. Those are like the 3 ways to be effective offensively. Of course, you got to defend and rebound and communicate and all that stuff. But like if we're talking offense, which is part of what you're talking about here, and I think typically where role players can sometimes lose their way is on the offensive end and having too big of egos or too high of expectations on the offensive end for what they do. So that's like Rui, Jake, Jackson Hayes, DeAndre Ayton, Maxi Kleber, Jared Vanderbilt. Those guys need to finish, they need to cut, and they need to space the floor. Those are the, at least 2 of those 3 things, ideally, offensively. Angelo, Jovan. Great to hear you again on the media mics and here on live. Do you have predictions / thoughts on how the Lakers should operate with their defensive schemes this year, especially with only one point of attack kind of guy? Yeah, I do have thoughts. And one other interesting thing that I wish I mentioned earlier, but I'm getting to it now, is JJ mentioned the Minnesota series and some of the regrets that he had. And a couple of his regrets were sending two to the ball against Ant, and that he said that that's something that he philosophically is against, and just regrets going to that because he didn't believe in it, but he felt like that was the best course of action at the time, but that it went against his basketball beliefs. And then he also regretted going so small in the first half, and that also leading to the offensive rebounds because guys were out of position. And then you had like Austin and Gabe trying to box out Rudy Gobert, and he's dunking on their heads. And like, so he talked about that and some of the regret with how particularly Game 5 played out. Thought it was interesting. He has yet to really mention or say he regrets Game 4. And I feel like reading between the lines, he probably doesn't regret Game 4 and would go down with the same players that he did. But I think my biggest thing with them is being a little bit less switchy. And my fear is that I think JJ, like, switching is part of modern basketball to a large degree. And I think there are positions you want to switch across. So I'm not saying never switch. Like, I think typically 1 and 2s can switch, 2s and 3s, 3s and 4. Like, I think you can typically switch across the nearby positions. It's like how wide is your range of position switching? And last year they largely switched 1 through 4. And then depending on who the 5 was, or depending on who the opponent was, sometimes they would switch 1 to 5 or 2 to 5 or whatever. I get why, and particularly with JJ talking about not wanting to get in rotation, not wanting to put 2 on the ball. I can understand that and get behind it to an extent. At the same time, I think we saw so many examples, particularly in the playoffs, but also during the regular season, where teams were just able to dictate the matchups and pick on a Gabe, pick on an Austin, pick on a Luka, even at times picking on like a Rui, and it was more a matter of like mismatching of if a guy's too quick, too athletic, too good at creating their own shot off the dribble, or too good at getting into the rim or getting into the paint. And like, I think they need to have a better. And there were times that they countered that well with pre-switching or scram switching or loading up, trying to load up against Ant. But I think there needs to be a better recourse than just letting Austin. You could go through different. Like I think about the early game in the season where KD was picking on Gabe Vincent on the stretch of. I want to say like 4th game of the season. Phoenix has that big 4th quarter comeback. There's the game in Dallas, the first one, where I think they ISO'd Austin 16 times in the 4th quarter, picking on Austin, scoring on him in isolation. And it's like, I just felt like they let their guys die in isolation too much, and they needed to find a way to counter that. So I don't know if that's zoning it up or being more aggressive with help, or, I mean, you got to be careful because JJ doesn't want to put 2 on the ball and get the team in rotation. And it sounds like he still views this more as a team defense than like an individual defense. So I think that's something they have to figure out. I think with pick and roll stuff, I would like to see them play a little bit more coverage. I think DeAndre Ayton's more of a drop big than a switch big. You can leverage some of his mobility at the level, and whether it's a little bit of blitzing, just playing up to touch. So basically he's in like a higher drop rather than a lower drop. I would like to see a little bit of that, leveraging Marcus's point of attack ability. So I think they have 3 guys who could play point of attack, even really 4. Marcus, I think Gabe could do it against like backup level guys. I don't think you want Gabe doing it against starting level guys or against or like in closing lineups. I think Austin can do it at times against I think Austin's been fine against guards. Where Austin gets into trouble is if he's guarding a bigger player, he will get like a Julius Randle, Gobert, as we saw in the playoffs. Like that's where, even going back to Team USA 2023, like when I think it was a Lithuanian guy was picking on Austin. It's like when Austin is at a size disadvantage, that's where that lack of athleticism or strength can come in. like you again, just look at the matchup data. Like he's defended Shea well, he's defended Steph well, he's defended De'Aaron Fox well, Ja Morant well. Like he's actually defended guard size guys that he's bigger than fairly well because he's got quick feet. It's more so the super athletic guys like the Ants and that type, or it's the bigger guys of you don't want him switched onto a Randall, a Jokic, etc. So that's where you got to be careful with Austin. But I think he could do it in certain matchups, and then I also think Vando can do it in certain matchups. So I think the wing defense in some ways is actually a little bit more like point of attack. I think they could actually get by with what they have. Wing defense, to me, it's really smart, Vando and LaRavia, but that combination I don't think is quite as good as you want compared to some other wing defenses. And then the rim protection, like last line of defense, it's Ayton, Hayes, Kleba, LeBron, Rui, Vando. Like I don't think that's good enough either. So I actually have more concern with the wing defense and the kind of last line of defense with the defensive rebounding and rim protection. But we'll see. I think for me, I would try to be more selective with switching and being a little bit more creative with pre-switching, which is like, okay, so they're trying to pick on Austin. They're trying to bring Austin's man up. You got to switch that before Austin's man gets into the action, or scram switching where if Austin is in the action, someone comes up, tags him from behind, and it's basically like a WWE style. You tag the guy out, Austin comes out, then that player's in. The same thing with Luka, same thing with Gabe, depending on the matchup. And also then I think if you get in situations where a player you don't want isolated is isolated, you then have to be aggressive with sending your help and then making sure your rotations are on point there. So that I think being a little bit more conservative with the switching, just because again, I think that's where they died too often last season, was just letting teams dictate how they wanted the offense to go. And like elite shot making will always beat subpar defense, even if it's, sort of even if you're doing the right things and shading them to certain spots, like the best offensive players will just beat you. So we got another super chat here from Drip Show. Thank you for the super chat. Luka and LeBron were great today. Shouldn't be any locker room drama this year. Luka and LeBron actually like each other. Yeah, I mean, that's been a theme throughout today's show. Like I thought the vibes were really great. Luka and LeBron. LeBron has said Luka is his favorite player to watch and has talked about the obvious comparisons with their game and Luka sort of modeling his game after LeBron. Luka's talked about his admiration for LeBron and wanting to play with him. And so I think those two guys really like each other. Like it's hard. They both play the game the right way. And they're both these basketball savants at this size that Luka at 6'7", 6'8", LeBron at 6'9". That we just have rarely seen players who could do what both of these guys can do in general, but let alone specifically at their respective sizes. And yeah, I don't see, as of right now, I don't see any locker room drama, but I especially don't see any drama with those two. I think they're both in a good spot and on the same page. All right. Pokey G, AR suffers a bunch on screens. If he worked on that this summer, I'd be thrilled. So he's actually a good chaser off the ball, but I agree that on the ball, that could be an area that he improves upon. So, yeah. Johnny says, Jovan doesn't understand that this league is a switching league and guards are explosive and fast. I mean, look, I do understand that. My counter is, I mean, we saw what it looked like last year when they switched a bunch, right? So they were able to, like, certainly they had stretches where they were really good defensively and really sharp game plans, but I think you saw there was a limitation to that in the Minnesota series of they couldn't really game plan their way out of that series. Like, I think there were things that JJ could have done better, and I don't think he coached a perfect series. I don't think he coached a perfect defensive game plan, but at some point, the Lakers' lack of athleticism and size and defensive versatility and just defensive ability was on display and was exposed. And I think they are better and should be better equipped for that type of matchup. But I don't think it's championship level defense right now on this team. And my greater point, there's nuance here, and maybe this is something I explore in the preseason at some point with like a breakdown or something. But I'm not saying don't switch, because it's hard to play defense in the modern NBA without switching. And again, I said I'm fine with switching, ones and twos and threes and fours and fives. I think you could often switch with the position next to you, and maybe there's a 1 through 3 switching and 2 through 4. Like you know your position and you know the players you're okay switching with. I think they got way too passive with that and allowed opposing offenses to dictate the terms of engagement and pick out, okay, we want Austin, we want Luka, we want Gabe, or we're gonna arrange the floor so LeBron is away from the rim, Jackson's away from the rim, whatever, and we're gonna have an action that ends with someone getting to the rim or someone getting a deep seal post up, and now they're in good position to get a putback or something. Like, I just think there were too many possessions where the Lakers were like, I just don't think they have the ideal switching defense. Now that's more of a roster construction thing, and that is something to, I think, figure out like longer term. But with this current group, I think there are limitations to them just switching 1 through 4. And again, I think with guards they can do it, but I think if you're switching, if Austin's the 1 technically defensively and LeBron's the 4 and those two are switching, I think you're going to have some mismatches. Ken Carter, would you move Vando for Royce O'Neal? Probably, just because I think Vando's defensive ceiling is clearly higher, but I think Royce is still a respectable defender. I think he's always been like a little overrated defensively, but he's still, like, I would say, clearly an above average defender. But I think the big thing is just his fit offensively, and he's not the most reliable shooter, and that's why he's been more of like a bench player type, but he's a much better offensive player and shooter and floor spacer than Vando. So I think just because of overall, I would say he's a better two-way player. PokeG says Ayton would have been a game changer that series. Yeah, I think if they have Ayton, they push that to at least 6, if not 7. Ibriz, Luka is 6'7". 6'7". That's some of you will get that, maybe like 10% of the audience. This is a really good point here from Sky Falcon 5. Selective switching. Golden State doesn't switch Steph onto a scorer and leave him on an island. This is exactly my point. Sky Falcon is making my point for me. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying don't switch. Like, you cannot not switch in 2025. Like that is, because switching like that is also a way when you don't have the best point of attack or wing defense to keep players in front of you is by switching those things. Because if you're playing at coverage, there is that little gap there for the player to attack, especially if they're quick enough, athletic enough, good at ball handling, good at creating separation, whatever. They can find the little nook in the defense, and they can even do that with switching as well. But like, switching can have its benefits of keeping, containing ball penetration and just keeping ball handlers in front. But it also, especially late, like, I also think that there's maybe it's more of a time situation in terms of maybe like post 10, 12 seconds, whatever, on the shot clock, you don't switch. It's more selective, whereas earlier in possession, you're okay with switching, because I think it's more so the late stuff where guys just cook player X that, and I get, like, I'm sure if you ask them, they're probably saying, well, we're in more of a team defensive scheme. We're trying to contain ball pressure with guys who maybe aren't the best at containing it. And we are taking teams out of what they want to do. We're inviting, like, that's sometimes a reason to switch, is you want to invite the team to mismatch hunt, to play more ISO ball, to get out of their rhythm offensively, and it becomes more stagnant, and guys don't touch the ball as much. And like, there's a ripple effect and a benefit to switching, to be clear, which, again, I'm not saying I'm anti-switching. I just think they switched a little bit too liberally and a little bit too frequently. And I don't think they had the defensive personnel to offset that. So that's more so my point. He's a zombie says 6'7". Some people will get that again. Tulip plays. A quick word on LA Sparks' $150 million new facility announcement. I think it's awesome, and I'll say like some of the renderings almost look nicer than the Lakers one, or like just as nice, which I think is awesome. I have never covered a Sparks game, so I don't know if and or when I will make it out to the facility, but I think it's really cool to see that and setting a new standard for WNBA facilities and just like what, and it rival, like that's nicer than I can say I've been to at this point basically every I've been to every road arena and every road city, but like I'm trying to think, I've been to most road facilities, and that's nicer than a good chunk of road facilities. Like that is state of the art. So I think that's dope. Kevin says, I got to do the hand 6'7". All right, man. I don't want to get clipped on here. I don't want to go viral for the wrong reason. Abdiel, sorry, let me know in the chat how to pronounce it. Lakers, thank you for the super chat. Lakers defense is ultimately going to come down to whether Braun wants to lock in on defense like he did last season. That's a big part of it. At the same time, I think like LeBron is so important to this group offensively. I think Austin did a really good job stepping up when Luka or LeBron or AD would be out, and either he's the number 2 guy, or even some situations like Indiana and Denver where he was the number 1 guy. But you still want Austin as like the number 3 guy in terms of the pecking order. I think that's a more appropriate slotting. So I think it's a fine balance where LeBron is in uncharted territory, about to be 41, year 23, most mileage. You're breaking all the mileage records in NBA history. And he's so integral to the Lakers on both sides of the ball. Because I agree with you. Like if they go with my projected starting lineup, or you know what I think should be the starting group of Smart, Austin, Luka, LeBron, Ayton, you can make the case that LeBron is the second best defender in that starting lineup, and that especially like the argument I've made with Smart is I think he should defend the best 1 through 3 player, and even some like I think there are some 4s he could even defend, and he has defended up over the last couple of years. I asked him about that today at Media Day, and. But if he's guarding, let's say he's guarding a 3, and there's if they're playing Minnesota, I mean, he's probably guarding Ant, which is a 2, then you're going to probably need LeBron on Randall, right? Or, maybe you could go Ayton on Randall, LeBron on Rudy, but like you go to like, Denver, it's going to be him on Gordon. Like it's just, he's going to be a big part of the Lakers defensive success with the starting group. And even if Rui's out there, he's still like, maybe Rui takes on some of those assignments a little bit more, but LeBron as a helper, as a rim protector, as the low man, he's a really big part of the Lakers defense. And that shift that we saw last year started in part in December, right after that Miami loss. Remember the Miami loss? They lost by 41. I believe it was 41. Basically quit in the third quarter. Like one of the most embarrassing performances I can remember for any team I've covered. They basically gave up right after halftime. And that was the low point of the season last year. And after that, LeBron and JJ had a sit down and a heart to heart, and like LeBron flipped the switch defensively and really took it to a different level. And I think that the biggest constant actually in that 20-4 stretch was LeBron. Like if you look at it, there's some AD in the beginning of that stretch. Then AD goes down. Then they're playing smaller with Jackson at the 5, and then a lot of small ball. Then they do the Luka AD trade. Then Luka's injured. Then he's out for a little bit. Then he comes back, and now they're assimilating a new identity. LeBron was the one consistent throughout that, and he was their best defensive player overall. They also traded away Max, who had been starting and playing a big role. So like LeBron was the biggest consistent on the defensive side for that stretch, in my opinion. And I'm with you. I think it's just tough because you want to be careful with his minutes, and you also need him a certain level offensively, and you're also navigating this just father time battle, and like he's gonna put up a great fight because he's put up a great fight through 22 years in the league, 40 years overall. But it is a tough battle to navigate in terms of workload, and like I think he can take a little step back offensively with Austin, with Ayton, with Rui, with Smart, with Laravia. They have some weapons to replace LeBron's production to an extent, right? But the best version of this team, LeBron is still a top 10 guy and an all NBA level offensive player. And how you get that plus the defense, like, you know, I mean, he did it last year, to be clear. Like, he did it for 2-3 months of the season. So we'll see how long he can keep that up. Bradley asks, off topic, but how did you get to your previous spot at The Athletic? Fight on. Shout out to SC. Quickly, so I out of school, I went to Fox Sports for a couple years as an editor, then went to ESPN for a couple years as an editor. And 2018, I was 25, and I reached a point where I was working at companies I wanted to work at, but I was not doing the role I wanted to do. So I started to put out feelers that summer. Like the off season is typically when people switch jobs and there's hirings and stuff. And just so happened someone who I actually knew from ESPN, coincidentally, like I just reached out to him. I was in New York for my brother's graduation. We met up for coffee, and he actually told me at that time that I was on the short list of young beat writers that they were considering for The Athletic. So I was like, yeah, I would love that. And they actually pitched me originally they were talking about me going to Portland or Orlando or Phoenix, because at the time they wanted 30 beat writers for all 30 teams. And I was like, I need to bet on myself. I need to do this. I need to cover a team as a reporter. I need to like get that break. So I was open to anything. They mentioned Miami. I was like, all right, I'll take Miami. Miami would be preferable to Sacramento or Orlando, but whatever. And so then kind of talking through different situations, different teams. And then all of a sudden there was someone they were trying to hire to cover the Clippers, and that fell through. And they were like, well, what if you stayed in LA and covered the Clippers? And I was like, awesome. Would love to never leave LA. Like my goal is to live in LA for my whole life. So covered the Clippers for 2 years. Then right after the Lakers won the title, they switched me over. And then I covered the Lakers for the last 5 years. So that is the short version of how I got over to The Athletic. Drip Show, thank you for the super chat. Behind the scenes, are Lakers loving Clippers downfall? I got to be careful with what I say. So I would, I think there are a lot of people who are loving the downfall right now with the way that the Clippers have carried themselves at times over the last half decade in this whole Kawhi situation. But I will leave it at that. Ebriz says, proud of you, G. Appreciate it. Appreciate you. Spurs 27-28 champs. Says Wemby put on another 20 pounds. And he also grew an inch. He's a freak. He's a monster. BC says, LOL, Clippers are never high enough to fall. Well, they have been propped up. Like, look, I was covering them when they got Kawhi, and everyone was calling them the next Bulls dynasty and the next Jordan and Pippen and all that stuff. So I think they've certainly been propped up in the media to an extent. Mo Love, who's your most improved player for the Lakers this year, either from role or improved ability? I will say, I think Jake LaRavia, and I guess it's hard to compare him to the Sacramento-Memphis version without, like, I wasn't watching him every single day, but just in seeing, I watched every offensive and defensive possession of his from last year on Synergy. And I think I have a good sense of his game and his strengths and weaknesses. And I did the film breakdown, which I recommend you all check out. But I think he could take it to an even higher level in like a consistent winning situation, playing next to LeBron. Like a lot of the times he played in Memphis, he was playing in like they had a stretch of like, I mean, 20 plus guys would play for Memphis because they were so injury riddled. And so when Jake was playing, he wasn't even playing necessarily with a Ja, with a Desmond Bane, with a Jaren Jackson. He was playing in these ragtag group of like 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th men, and he was standing out, but he wasn't benefiting from the ecosystem necessarily, or at least consistently, of playing off of Ja, playing off of Bane, playing off of Jaren Jackson, playing off of all of them together. And then he goes to Sacramento, and they don't have De'Aaron Fox anymore. It's Sabonis and DeRozan and Levine, and those are all like individually skilled and talented players, and I think all underrated passers, but not like elite top 1% floor generals the way that Luka and LeBron are. And even having Austin as like your third guy, like that's as good of a passing trio as there is in the NBA. So I think LaRavia is really going to eat off of those three and the shot quality that he's going to get. I also think the Lakers need his defense, and they need as many two-way guys as possible. And he, to me, is one of the few guys that I think can contribute positively on both sides of the ball. I think he's going to be a connector offensively, just makes the right reads, the right pass, takes smart shots, is going to space the floor, can attack a closeout, sneaky offensive rebounder, and then defensively can defend multiple positions. And I defended Jokic well last year, defended Tatum. Like, he could defend multiple positions. So I think he's a guy that certainly I think he will exceed expectations for fans. But I also think if you compare where he was at earlier in his career, like, I think he's just going to continue to level up. If we're talking about current Lakers, I guess Vando maybe bouncing back to like who he was earlier in his Lakers tenure, that would be a pick for me. It's hard. Like, I think Austin will continue to get a little bit better, but I don't know exactly what that looks like. Luka, I guess, but like, he's already so great that I'm trying to think of less popular picks. So I would say, I guess LaRavia and Vando are two guys that I think could exceed expectations. MChe says, thank you for the super chat. Gabe and Dalton not seeing minutes unless players are out. I agree with Dalton. I don't agree with Gabe, and I'm not inserting my opinion here. Well, like a little bit, but I just think that JJ trusts Gabe too much, and I will say this partly depends on if Smart starts or not. I think if Smart comes off the bench, that probably marginalizes Gabe's role a little bit more, just because if you're staggering the rotation a certain way and like Marcus is more of your sixth man, I think that affects, like, in a way, he's kind of like the third guard technically. If you're saying like Austin and Luka are the two starting guards offensively, at least, and maybe defensively, depending on how they want to use Luka, then Marcus is like the third guard, and that probably slots Gabe a little bit lower. Whereas if Marcus starts, then I think it's more Austin and Marcus are the guards, like defensively. Like, I mean, it depends how you want to look at it, but I think Marcus starting or coming off the bench does make a difference slightly. But I think Gabe, going back to game 4, which, I will continue to reference this, he was the one player that JJ considered, like, he brought him to the scorer's table to check in, and too much time passed and there was under a minute left, and he was like, all right, get back to the bench. And then he never made a sub. But Gabe was the one guy. So just thinking about that, like, that was above Vando, that was above Dalton, that was above Jackson, that was above Jordan Goodwin. I just think that, remember there was the quote earlier last season, JJ said he'd love to have 10 Gabe Vincents, 12 Gabe Vincents, however many Gabe Vincents he said. There was an amount of Gabe Vincents that JJ said any coach would love to have. Like, I just think I think there's a bit of a gap between, like, Gabe is such a professional and seems to be a guy who takes things very seriously, like listens to the coaching staff, is a good teammate, is a good soldier. And I get the shot selection, the missing the open threes, that stuff can bother fans and can maybe color the perception of him a little bit. But I think within that building, he has support, and particularly with the coaching staff. So I do think Gabe, now, is his role maybe reduced a bit? I could see that. And is he more of like a 12 to 15 minute a night player because of the Smart addition, and Luka and Austin are just getting certain reps in the backcourt? Maybe, but I think he's going to be in the top 9. I would be pretty surprised if he's not a top 9 rotation player. Sky Falcon 5 says, there was a game last season where Jake guarded Jokic and frustrated him. Yeah, he was picking him up. Like, he's unafraid to pick up guys full court, and he was fronting him. And yeah. Johnny says Ayton is now the third option. That's possible. I think that Austin is going to take more shots and score more than him next year. Could be wrong on that, but that's my prediction right now with how things are looking. Kane Carter, would you do Gabe and connect for Terrence Mann, potential starter guy? Haven't seen that one. Yeah, it's been weird how the Terrence Mann fall off. Like you go back a few years ago, he had that game against, how many points did he have against Utah? He had like 30 something points against Utah and was killing Gobert. 39 and hit 7 threes in game 6 to help the Clippers go to their first conference finals. So I like Terrence Mann. I think he's famously, Jerry West was very high on Terrence Mann, and we know Jerry West's track record, particularly with the Lakers, but it extended to the Clippers with guys like Shea and Terrence Mann and identifying those guys. So it's interesting how like he had such a promising start to his career and he's kind of fallen off perception wise and like been bouncing around a little bit. I would like to see what he looks like in Brooklyn first before I pull the trigger on something like this. But if he looks more like the version of himself he did 2 or 3 years ago, I think that version is a better player than both of those guys, and I'd be like open to that. But it really depends on that. Mo Love says it would be nice if Smart taught Bronny how to play killer D. Yeah, and I think like Marcus is the type of player that Bronny should aspire to be like. I've made this point before, but I think Bronny's really grown offensively, and I think that's important. And maybe that carves out a Scottie Pippen Jr. type role where he's like the floor general, like a really high level floor general for a second unit, and has the offensive chops to drop 8, 10, 12 points, get a few assists, and play solid defense. And like he can carve out a backup role at a solid level. The thing is, on this team, just go down, like there's only so much playing time, there's only so much usage, and Luka is going to be one of the highest usage players in the NBA. That's just how he plays, and that's his skill set, and he's one of the best ever to do that. So that's how it's going to go. You have Austin, who's going to have, whether he's starting, coming off the bench, or they're staggering them, whatever, Austin is going to have a certain amount of usage. LeBron is going to have a certain amount of usage. That's before even getting to Smart and Gabe and Rui and Ayton and LaRavia. Like there's a lot of mouths to feed with this group offensively. And so I think a lot, like it is promising to see the ways that Bronny has improved, but he's not going to be handling the ball over Luka, over LeBron, over Austin, even over Smart. I know many of you want him to handle it over Gabe. I still think that's a bit of a dream right now compared to the reality of the situation. So it's like, I think his way onto the floor is to be a better shooter than Gabe and or be a better defender than Gabe. If he could do one of those two things, I think that's the real path to his minutes. But Bronny being able to like run pick and roll and get downhill or like take step back jumpers, like that's nice in Summer League. That's nice in South Bay. I do not really see that being his role with this team. Like I think multiple guys would probably have to go down for that to be his role. So I think if he wants to exceed expectations and crack the rotation, I think it has to start on the defensive end. And learning from Smart is as good as it gets, especially around that size. Stephen Lee, Jovan, do you think Rob consults and even gets a blessing from JJ on trades given the commitment we made with his extension and due to JJ's love for Gabe and Rui? This is why no trade. Yes, my understanding with how the front office operation works, Rob is consulting with JJ and they have a really good relationship. They've both talked about seeing not only basketball, but life in similar ways. And I think it would be honestly bad practice to not consult your coach, especially if you are viewing him, like JJ talked about it today with Spectrum, about this being a real partnership with him and Rob and Jeannie. And part of that partnership is communicating. And so JJ actually made it sound like in that interview that he was the one who came up with the idea to go after Marcus Smart. So I thought that was another interesting detail within that. So it sounded like JJ was the one who really pushed the Smart pursuit initially, and then Luka has long admired Smart, called him the best defender that's ever defended him, and then seemingly Rob got on board and executed it. So yeah, I believe that they consult and they work together. And so with Gabe and Rui, I would say I think they're much higher on Rui than Gabe. And I also think the collective, like the Lakers' fondness of Rui precedes JJ's arrival. They were fond of, like, that was a thing when Darvin Ham was there and bringing Rui off the bench. They were not happy about that. Like Rui and Max and Austin, and to a lesser extent D'Lo, were like the 3 to 4 players that they were pretty upset with how Darvin handled those players' roles and minutes and whatnot. So like the Rui fans have been there since basically since, like, because I also think the Lakers, like, they like when it's a point of pride for the franchise with the scouting and the talent development, and they look at guys like a Rui, like an Austin, like a Caruso, a Zubats, a Larry Nance. Like they've had a lot of hits, and whether it's the draft or trading for guys or signing undrafted guys or guys out of the G League or whatever, like they've got a lot of hits over the past decade plus, and it's a point of pride for them. And Rui is a hit for them. Like Rui has become something. Rui has become something he wasn't able to become consistently in Washington. And of course, Rui gets the most praise and acknowledgement for that. Like he deserves it the most. But of course, you look at the Lakers identifying him, and the fact like that trade was a masterstroke of flipping Kendrick Nunn in seconds for Rui. Like that was an awesome trade for them. So I think Rui, like part of it is like sometimes the Lakers can have the attachment to certain players. And I also think they've made the mistake of underrating certain guys, right? Like they underrated Alex Caruso, they underrated Ivica Zubats, and those are two of the biggest mistakes that they've made over the last 7 years in terms of player evaluations and letting guys go. So I think they want to be careful not to repeat that same mistake with Rui. I would argue that Zubats and Caruso are just much better players, and like are much just have a cleaner fits within like add both those guys to this team, and like they just go to a completely different level, right? Or even one of these guys, like Caruso would be a perfect fit next to Luka, Austin, LeBron, Zubats. He just had a all NBA third team level season, like got a bunch of votes for that and most improved votes and stuff. So I think, that I get why they're a little hesitant to move on from Rui for that, but I don't think it has to do with JJ necessarily. Like I do think JJ likes Rui, but I wouldn't say he's the biggest Rui fan among the internal decision makers. I think there's people even higher on that list that are higher on Rui. Mche, following up here, says, in my opinion, Marcus Smart, better Gabe, Jake LaRavia, better Dalton equals no minutes. Look, I see the logic. I would just say, so if we talk through this here, so I think there's the top 6, which is the starters with Rui or Marcus as the 5th guy, and then one of them as the 6th guy, right? So like that's the top 6 of the team. I think Jake is going to be in the top 9. I think Vando is going to be in the top 9. If we're saying Dalton is not in the top 9, which I agree with, you are now saying, I mean, it could be the backup center over Gabe. Maybe Gabe's 10, backup center is 9. Maybe it's both backup centers and they're going a little bit bigger and unconventional. Maybe we see some Hayes Kleba or Ayton Kleba because of Kleba's shooting and his defensive versatility. Maybe they go a little bit bigger. Knowing JJ, I don't think that's going to be the case, but we'll see. So like you have the backup center spot, which I guess could push Gabe back. But then once we get past that, it's like, okay, well, if it's not Dalton, you got Thiero, who right now is not cleared and could be cleared within the next week, but we'll see. You got Bronny, who I just don't see Bronny at this stage playing above Gabe. And who am I? Well, you got the 2 backup centers. So I think I'm at 14 players if I'm not mistaken right now. So I guess I just don't see where they're gonna play at least 9 guys, if not 10. Like typically you play around 10 in the regular season. So I don't see how Gabe gets iced out. All right, catching up here. Angelo T. Yo again. Jovan, how are you finding working for yourself these days? Any tips on keeping accountable and disciplined? How has it changed compared to when you were first getting your foot in the door? It's changed a lot because so I was under contract with The Athletic through August 31st. So I got paid out by week, or like every couple weeks through my contract. This has been the first month I'm out in the wilderness. I am getting my money through the various channels that I get my money from, with the podcast and the channel. But the notion of like a stable paycheck and consistent money week to week just no longer exists. So I do have a fire under me to continue to produce content, go live, do episodes, do short form content, which is something I'm trying to do more of. By the way, I will have a vlog after this from Media Day that I hope you all check out, either YouTube Shorts, TikTok, Instagram, wherever. But I think working for myself has been great. I do not miss working at The Athletic. I do not miss writing. So again, I think like the concept of stability in a paycheck is nice, and I do miss that. But I have not for 1 second missed working there or having to write before coming on here. Like with this, I left the Media Day when I wanted to. I didn't have to write a news or anything. Came back, rewatched and re-listened to a bunch of the press conferences and just made sure I had my notes and knew what I was talking about, and then went live. And like that's what I want to do. And that's how I want to do this. So it's been great. And I'm just trying to figure out memberships, merch, cadence, all that stuff. I'm still figuring out. In terms of keeping myself accountable and disciplined, it's still something I'm working on a daily basis. I think a big thing for me is like sometimes just you just like celebrating the little wins and really just forcing yourself to do it. So one thing for me with like going to the gym, for example, is I try to work out for a certain amount of time, but even if I have like a 20-minute window, I'm just like, I'd rather work out for 20 minutes and get a quick workout in than like not work out because I'm like, oh, it's not long enough. It's not going to be as good of a workout. And then I don't work out and then I'm beating myself up later because I didn't work out. Right. So I think like, even if it's like, okay, I could do a quick video, or you want to do a podcast, but you don't have the right equipment or you don't have the right setting or you don't have guests or whatever, like just do it. Just start. And you could always, improve it and learn from where you need to get better and what your weaknesses are or whatever. But I think just doing it sometimes, even if it's not exactly your vision, the perfect way, like just do it. That's my kind of biggest thing with accountability and discipline is like, the old Nike slogan, because now they got a different one. El Manji says, bro, are you leaving the Lakers? I am not leaving the Lakers. I am here. Mo Love says, we can share Jovan with other Laker fans to help him generate some more cash. Yes, please. If you're watching right now and you're not subscribed, I would appreciate you subscribing. I would appreciate you telling all your friends about the show and having them join the late night gang. Ken Carter says, hey, Jovan, hot take after 2021 when 80 gained weight. Do you feel that ruined Braun and 80's ceiling even after they moved Brody? 80's offensive bag reduced, especially as a shooter, and his speed. Yes and no. So I'll say a couple things here with this. One, I think the Russ trade ruined the LeBron 80 era. There's really no way around that. That was like everything went downhill from that point. There was the 2023 Western Conference Finals after they traded Russ, but like things were never the same. I think between Clutch and the Lakers, between LeBron and the Lakers, even like just the roster, they lost KCP, they lost Caruso, they lost Kuz, they lost picks, they lost like it just things went there was a depletion of like everything after that trade. So I do think I would put that as more of like the fork in the road where things went off the course of. I really think they could have won a second title had AD stayed healthy and continued to compete had they not made that trade. But in terms of AD's weight and offensive bag, I will say, like, at this point, for whatever reason, AD just shot the ball better in 2020. And skeptics and critics are going to point to the bubble. That's fine, but you could also look at earlier in the season before the bubble, he was still shooting the ball pretty good and better than he did in other seasons. Like, sometimes guys just have career years in an aspect of their game. With AD, for whatever reason, the 2019-20 season was the best shooting of his career, and that helped propel the Lakers to a championship. But I don't think the weight helped, and for some guys, certainly putting on more weight, carrying that it's almost like, feels like you're shoot like it, I don't know if you ever shot with a weighted vest on, but like that's kind of what it could feel like, and it affects your motion, your lift from your legs, and you know, now you're changing your shooting form a little bit. Like there can be a compounding effect from putting on weight. So I think like two things can be true. I think he might have just had a career year, and he also didn't help himself by putting on weight and bulking up to play center full time, which is the way the Lakers wanted to shift things. So the other part of this is like the Lakers just could have given AD what they wanted, or what he wanted, of having another startable center and playing him at the 4. But as we know, especially because he regressed as a shooter, it was tricky to find that right pairing of like, there's only so many Brook Lopez's or Kristaps Porzingis's in terms of guys who could space the floor and protect the rim. I think AD kind of wanted that guy, but they were just, you know, Miles Turner, another one. But yeah. All right. MChe again, thank you for another super chat. Expand your NBA coverage. Keep the channel Lakers centric. Create new channels that has all the NBA news. I'm sure we'll all support the new channels. So I appreciate you saying this. I also really like your avatar of Rob in the Lakers hat. One question for the chat that I would appreciate if you guys gave me the feedback here. And I'll probably pose this as a poll in the YouTube community section just to get some more feedback. But right now, my plan, I'm finalizing it here within the next like week or two, but I'm planning on doing a national show once a week where I'm going to bring on non-Lakers specific people and talk about the NBA. And if the Lakers it's, you know, February or March again, and the Lakers have won 8 in a row and they're playing the best basketball in the season, then that will be the main storyline that week. But like whatever is the main storyline of that week, that will lead the show, and then we'll bounce around other topics. And like, depending on the guests, like if I have Jason Timpf on, who I plan on having on, of course, Jason and I are not going to convene and not talk about the Lakers. But depending on who the guest is, depending on what's relevant in the storyline, like it'll be more of an NBA national centric show rather than just a Lakers show. Will not affect, it will only be additional coverage. It will not be affecting my Lakers. Like I'm still doing 2 episodes a week, going live after every game, going to every game or every home game, going to every practice. Like it's not affecting any of my Lakers coverage. It's really just more work on my end to, you know, stay up to date with everything that's going on with the league and have an outlet to cover the entire league with a weekly episode. I've been weighing putting that on this channel versus starting a new channel. There are some upside and downsides to starting a new channel. Cannot monetize it until it hits certain marks with subscribers and views and retention and watch hours and all that stuff. So part of me has been leaning toward just adding it here and being like, hey, if you don't want to watch it, there's no pressure to watch it. Like hopefully it doesn't turn you off from the channel or turn you off from my other content, but like it's purely just additional content that you could choose to watch or not. But would love to know what you guys think about either new channel and for the show, or keeping it on here but just branding it a little bit differently. And then if it's not Lakers related, you don't have to watch it, but would love to know. Angelo asks, Jovan, if you're not going to all the games live, would you consider doing a play-by-play watch along. Would love that. Yeah, so I'm actually going to be talking to Playback here soon. I had someone from Playback reach out to me, and we're talking about that. My one fear, or not fear, but like I do go live for a while, right? And it could be a little taxing on my voice, and I'm basically creating some form of content every single day. So the thought of like potentially doing a 3-hour playback and talking the whole time, and then going into a live and talking for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, however long I go, that's a lot of talking, but maybe I'm definitely going to do it. I'm just trying to decide if it's like a every game I'm not at thing, or how that's going to work. I'm seeing separate channel, customizable notifications. Would love that. Cedric M says, would love that. Expand the reach, share that knowledge. Trevor Lane's doing that now. Mo Love said that's fine to do the whole NBA, maybe a Western Conference focus. I probably will focus. Like, look, I've been on the record saying I like good basketball, and there's much better basketball in the West than the East. So I don't think I want to be loading leading many shows with like the Charlotte Hornets unless they're really good. In defense of the genre, 1022 hairstyling tutorial, please. Okay, we will make it happen with the extra content. BC says customizable notifications. There should be. People are saying separate channel. All right, I'll do a poll, but it's good to see this from you guys. I appreciate it. Kane Carter, has there ever been players you cover, watch the podcast, and them hit you up later because of something you said? Yeah, I don't know how many actually. I've said this before. I know people. I know people at the Lakers watch the show and stay up to date. Unfortunately, I think I get aggregated a lot, and people will see the aggregation. So I've had players be mad at me for certain things I've said, but I try to be as fair and honest as I can be. So it's going to ruffle some players before. BC says most people work 8 hours a day, Jovan Buha. Yes, I'm not. This isn't about me. I have no issue. I work more than 8 hours a day. It's not a matter of that. It's more talking 5 hours straight can be a lot on. I just don't want to be like barely getting by during the. Point being, like I prioritize the lives over everything. So I just want to make sure I'm good to go for the lives, but. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to do it. I'm just trying to make sure I'm doing stuff that's sustainable. Kane Carter says, what I was saying is part of the glamour of AD was his agility off the dribble game, his speed being a mismatch when he gained weight. For sure. I think I'm glad you added this context because I think it actually affected his speed and ability, his off the dribble game, because I think going back to the title season, I think AD was a bit shiftier off the dribble, and I think bulking up made him more physical on drives and made his post-ups more physical, and there were certainly things he did better. I think he was a better rebounder post bulking up, but I also think it definitely affected his shot to some extent, and it affected, I think more so like his face up off the dribble game, which I think was better earlier in his Lakers tenure. BK Design, Jovan, what was your favorite moment from today's media day? That's a good question. I mean, I would say that trying to think of like my interactions, like the back and forth with LeBron. Like I knew when I asked him what he worked on this offseason, he was going to say his golf swing. So I was prepared for that. And I answered, or I kind of pushed back on that quickly. But I don't know, man. It was, I thought the Lakers, like overall, it was a really well-run operation by the Lakers. Like I thought, I shared it on X, but I will be posting it in the vlog that I do later today. Like they had this really cool display with a bunch of the jerseys for the season. They had a TV playing highlights from last year, but they had like Showtime stuff and Kobe and Shaq stuff. And the iconic Jeff Hamilton leather jackets for the 2020 team, and then the 2001 back-to-back jacket. They had Kobe shoes. They had all this cool stuff on display. They catered Korean barbecue and smash burgers and ice cream, and like they just went all out. So like that, it just like little things like that make it just a more enjoyable experience as a media member. Like we are easy to please. If you just give us free stuff, we're happy. So that was cool. But I think, finally, I guess like seeing Luka in this setting and having like, obviously I've been to many Luka press conferences at this point, and it's settled in that he's a Laker, but like this was sort of, we're now kicking off the season with him as a Laker. So I guess that was maybe the thing, but I'm just happy basketball is back. I'm just happy the Lakers are back. Like this is the best time of year. This is like first day of school vibes. So everything was great today. E says stick to the same channel, name it, and make the titles and series clear. Yeah, so tentative running title is Beyond the Block, because obviously Buha's block is my main thing, and that is Lakers focused. So Beyond the Block is me expanding beyond that. And then I was going to make the coloring black and red instead of black and yellow, which is my primary colorway. But yeah, so that's regardless of if I do a second channel or not. But I will say, for those who are pushing me to do a second channel, I hope you guys subscribe there, because that would go a long way in helping that out. In defense of the genre, 1022, when asking players / coaches questions, how do you balance asking something juicy versus not too aggressive? I would say this is an art that it's way more art than science in terms of, I think at this point, like I know how guys are going to answer certain things or who responds well to certain questions. So they're like a guy like Austin. You could Austin got asked today, and it was Brian Kamenetsky, and it was a fair question. It's just you don't always see this type of question asked. He was asked about, there's a lot of there's a segment of people that don't think you and Luka can work together long term. Because of the duplications in your games offensively and some of your defensive limitations. And like, do you agree with that? And how do you go about trying to like figure that out when you have someone you're so similar with? And that is a pretty direct question, kind of going at a lot of the discourse around Austin this year. And Austin he's always fair game. Like, I think some players, if you ask them that type of question, they're going to puff their chest out and have some sort of pushback or kind of go at the reporter for asking that question. But that's not like, so there's some players like Austin who I think you could kind of throw anything at and he's going to handle it and just have this kind of earnest response. And I think we know some players in the recent Lakers past who even softball questions, they would not like thrown at them and they would find a way to twist it or get upset with it. So I think it really depends on the player and partly your dynamic with the player, but as someone who's been around these guys in the locker room, on the road and stuff, like I have a pretty good rapport with most of them. So I would say, like, anytime I ask a question, I just always try to root it in like being fair and also trying to ask or think about it through multiple lenses. The one thing you don't want to ask is, ideally, unless it's a really important yes or no question, you want to try to not frame it in like a yes or no way. You want to try and frame it a little bit open-ended. And it's funny because sometimes I would ask these, like, earlier in my career, I would ask these like intricate questions and I would get a short answer or it'd be somewhat of a yes or no base to the question, and it would end up being a yes or no answer. And someone would ask a basic ass question that I frankly thought was like a bad question and was very open-ended and just not really sure what they were trying to do with it. And then they'd get these great answers. And I'm like, sometimes with the players, like, if you like simplify it and just allow them, like, sometimes when you lead too much with the question, it's too long of a question. It's both hard to retain it in the moment, but also you're almost framing it for them where they can, especially if they don't want to answer it for whatever reason, they could just give you like a quick answer to kind of get out of it. Whereas if you leave it a little bit more open-ended, that puts the onus on them to figure out like, how do I want to answer this? And it can expose how they really feel about that, if that makes sense. So it's an art versus science thing, but I've tried to tailor my questions more so to each player. But I also try to focus more on basketball questions. So some guys don't want to talk basketball. Like last week, JJ didn't want to talk basketball, but that to me is typically a disarming thing where it's like, if I'm asking you a basketball question, hopefully you're going to be open to answering that. My mom asked, question, did you ask LeBron how he enjoyed the Bad Bunny concert? No, I did not. That was not a media day question, but that is potentially a training camp question. Daniel asks, when will Thiero be available? ESPN reported potentially a week from now. So that is something to monitor, but I will also note, how many times have we heard a guy with knee swelling will be ready in a week and then doesn't happen. So I'm Kurt Affair says, Jovan, for your second channel, the best name is Laravia's Lane. You guys are just killing me with these Jake comparisons, man. I just don't see it. He's actually got a better fade than me right now. I got to get a haircut. David says Jake's take. Johnny said they told us he'd be ready this Friday. Thiero? Who said that? I haven't been checking my phone, so I'm just making sure I'm staying up to date. Lakers are practicing tomorrow, as expected. Steve, with some logic and some reason and eyesight, says Jovan doesn't look like Laravia in any way. Jake combs his hair down, and because he's like losing his hair. All right, I'm not gonna back that, but you'll say Jovan is the hairline goat. I will back that. Johnny says the Lakers said in a week. Well, that was today though, so that would be next Monday. Mo Love says, how's the Achilles? It comes in waves. I 10 out of 10 do not recommend tearing your Achilles. There are days it's tighter. There are days it's like stiffer. So a lot of stretching and just kind of working through it. But it's definitely not the same. And I definitely like feel it. Like there'll just be times throughout the day where it's like my other Achilles, I don't even know it's there. It just exists. This one, you feel it. Freyne Mai says similarly shaped head. That's all. I probably have a bigger head, to be honest. Like I have a pretty big head. I'm not gonna lie. My head's huge. So it's taking up almost the full screen right now. So Michael D. What up, Michael D? Been a while, super busy with school. Just wanted to pop in and say I've been watching all your stuff and catching up on lives. Thank you. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you for making time, continuing to pop in. We're full steam ahead. I'm probably going to be doing something like every day moving forward. So yeah, appreciate you. David L. Thank you for this, because I've done some Nick Smith Jr. film review today and data review. So he's asked, what's the story of the Nick Smith Jr. signing? So Nick Smith Jr. was just signed to a two-way contract by the Lakers. He was waived by the Hornets after just 2 seasons. 21-year-old, 6'2" guard, I believe number 27 pick in the 2023 draft, was someone on the Lakers' radar at the time. So I think they were ideally trying to get a big, but obviously that was the JHS draft. But he was someone in that mix for them. My read on Nick Smith, I think it's a smart signing. I think he's shown, like last year, averaged about 9 points and a little under 3 assists. He has shown some promise, and for what it's worth, this is always a bonus. Is he grew up a Kobe fan, was number 8 for Kobe. And we know that could sometimes carry some weight with the franchise, but in all seriousness, like I see the potential. I think that So on the one hand, like he's got the pedigree, recent, former first round pick, 21 years old, has been productive at the NBA level. I think the concern is there was a team that, like, Charlotte's been a weird situation, as we know, and they've kind of been this transient place where people pass through very quickly, and they already have LaMelo and they have Brandon Miller, and like they have some of their perimeter stuff sorted out. But to give up on a play, like, just think about the invert, or a different example of this is the Lakers essentially gave up on JHS a little over a year into his career. This is like a little bit longer, but they did give up on Nick Smith, so that's like a little bit of at least a yellow flag that a team like that up close to the situation, giving up on a former first round pick 2 years into his career, still a 21-year-old, like that's at least a yellow flag, if not an orange flag. I would also note that he did a story, I believe, with ESPN where they were talking to players who are number 8, number 24, and he's like, I modeled my game after Kobe. And while it's that is nice, like, he is not Kobe. He is not close to being Kobe. And I think there's like a little bit of that like bench gunner vibe. Like, he shot 39% in both of his first 2 seasons, which is far below average. Really struggled as a 2-point shooter his rookie year, but excelled as a 3-point shooter. Then it was the inverse his second season, where he was really improved as a 2-point shooter, really struggled, or not struggled, but like was a below average 3-point shooter. Has been, I think, one area that he's got to figure out is like pull up threes, shot selection. He's been in that like 32 to 34% range in pull up threes, a lot of pull up mid range jumpers, and not getting to the rim enough, and also being a below average finisher within like 10 feet. Then also defensively, he's below average. He's 6'2", 185. Like that's very undersized and thin. At one point he was listed at 6'5". I think he's still listed at 6'5" on Cleaning the Glass, I believe, or there's somewhere online he's listed at 6'5", which is just, he's 6'2". So I think it's a worthwhile gamble, and I believe we've seen it with the Lakers and a former Charlotte first round pick before with Malik Monk, right? And he fits that. Like, I guess we've discussed it when discussing the Lakers basketball philosophy or Rob's basketball philosophy. They tend to like these combo scorers who are a little inefficient, but like they have the skill and whatnot. So definitely a skilled shot creator and scorer. And I think he improved as a passer from his first season to his second season, and that's notable. But he's a below average defender, very below average efficiency wise. And we've seen some shakiness first with 2s and finishing, and then with 3s his second season. So like, I just want to temper expectations, because I don't want people thinking that he's going to usurp Bronny or usurp Gabe in the rotation. Like, I think we're a ways away from that. But I think it's a worthwhile gamble, and I'm interested to see how he performs in the preseason. Johnny asks, is everything in the media moving to YouTube? Yes and no. Like, I think YouTube is the most important platform right now, just in general. I think anyone with any business should be creating content on YouTube and social in general. But like, YouTube is like, more people watch YouTube than watch Netflix, and not just YouTube compared to Netflix, but specifically YouTube on TVs. Like, some of you right now are maybe not live, or maybe live, but later, some of you are rewatching this on a TV. And right now, like, as when you think about like TVs and streaming and everything, you think Netflix and Prime and HBO and Hulu and Peacock and all the big Apple TV, like all the big streaming platforms. But it's actually YouTube that is the biggest one, and it doesn't really get thought about that way. But that to me is like mind blowing. So I do think there's a lot of people moving over. My mom says my head is perfect. Thank you for hyping me up. BK Design says that JSN. Sometimes I mix up the fantasy football. This ain't that. Yo. What up, man? William says keep it on the same channel. Okay. Mo Love says, don't we already have a 6'2 guard or two of them? They do. But two-way, like, I think he's worth a shot, right? Like, he's worth a shot. Johnny says, Monk was the best shooter we had outside of Rui. Yeah, Monk was nice. Ruman says, I'm currently watching this on Thursday. Are you in the future? Hey, well, tell me what's going to happen 3 days from now. Mo Love, short attention span, 30-second hot takes are the way to go. Our brains are all mushy. I mean, look, I could do it if you guys want. I could fire off the hot takes. I can get spicy. Matthew Wilson says, Gabe for Josh Green or Thibault. If they could pull off either one of those, I would do it. I don't know. Thibault's expiring, so I don't see why Portland does it. Josh Green, I think he's got a couple more years. 1 year. Yeah, he's got one more year. 14.7. Making 13.7. The thing is, like, why? I guess Charlotte gets off the extra year, but you got to figure out, is it like Gabe plus a second for either one of these guys, and is that enough? Toonspade, non-player related, loved everything JJ said during the Spectrum interview. Second year coaching will be major for contending chances. Excuse me. Yes, 100% agree. I thought JJ seemed to be in a better mood. Like, not that he wasn't in a great mood at media day, but like I liked his answers more with the Spectrum crew. So yeah, I thought there was a lot to be encouraged by. Sky Falcon, is Josh Green even good? It's a fair question. I think he's a little overrated, maybe. I don't know if overrated, but like he's a guy that I feel like a lot of fan bases want because he fits the 3-and-D profile. I'm pulling up I will note he's played 5 years. He shot 36% or better on threes in 4 of the 5 and make that 4 consecutive. And look at really the last 3 years, 40%, 39%, 39%. So that's pretty good. And decent volume, 3.3, 3.6. So like he's I think the defensive end, he might have a little bit, like he's 6'5", 200. That's a little bit smaller than you'd want from like a real wing defender. I think he's more of like a 2 defender in some threes, but yeah. Ken Carter, Jovan, what would you say is the difference between telling Austin come off the bench and Iggy, Lamar, Naz Reid, Manu doing it, or asking Melo or Beal to come off the bench? Okay, a lot of context here. I mean, we could go situation by situation quickly. So Iguodala had already been an all-star and already made a bunch of money. He was already established. So yes, you can say like maybe because he's more established, that's even more of an ask or more of a sacrifice. And that's a fair counterpoint. But like they had Harrison Barnes, who was on the rise. There was not another obvious place for Andre to start. So they pitched him on being the 6th man. He agreed to that, embraced it. Lamar, similar thing where you could argue, like, I guess my quick interpretation of this, and again, I've said I don't really like any of the Austin stuff because it just gets so like polarizing sometimes, but Iggy, I would say it was like clearly better than Harrison Barnes. So that maybe is like the closest one. Lamar, like part of it was they had Bynum and Gasol, and there were nights and certain matchups where Lamar made more sense. But like, I mean, Powell was clearly the best guy. I think on balance, Lamar was better than Bynum, although Bynum did have the All-Star year. But like, that was a little bit more matchup based, but it was pretty close. Naz Reid, previously it was Cat and Gobert, who at the time with Naz coming off the bench, like they were clearly better than him. Now it's been Gobert and Randall, and I think Naz, I think most people on balance would say Gobert is better than Naz, but like there are matchups where it makes more sense. And I think Naz has some real defense limitations, which also I guess you could make some similarities there with Austin. Manu, it depends on, like they wanted to stagger him and Tony, which I guess is also where you could make the case with Luka and Austin, but they had depends on the year, but like they had some stretches where it was like a Michael Finley or kind of a placeholder, but they also had stretches where it was a Danny Green who at the time 40+% 3-point shooter. There was some buzz with him getting finals MVP in 2013. I think people forget that, but like high level 3-and-D guy. And then Melo was just at the end of his career. He did not play much longer from that point on and was just a different phase. And I would argue Beal kind of reached that phase as well, especially that was more of a fit thing with him and Booker. But like, I guess Beal, there's maybe some similarities. I think the difference with like even a Melo or a Beal though, is those guys were already established. They had made their hundreds of millions. They had been all-stars and they were kind of hitting different points of their careers. Austin is still on the rise. Like Austin might not be in his prime yet or playing his best basketball, and he's still due for a big payday. And I think asking him to come off the bench and please don't aggregate this and please don't, like, this is not sourced. This is just pure speculation, pure me reading the situation. I think if they ask him to come off the bench, you are basically pushing Austin out of the Lakers because you are saying like long term, I think Austin wants to get paid and be a starter. And he just did an athletic interview. We talked about being an all-star. So like that is not coming off of the bench. And a $35-40 million player, which was the price reported in the Athletic, that is not coming off the bench. Like, show me the $35-40 million player who's coming off the bench right now. And again, unless it's it's context, but like the Melo and Beal having big contracts, like there was trades involved and there was them going to a new situation where they were kind of pushed out. This is just, I think, a different context. And like, I would also argue with all the other bench guys, they had guys at least better than that, like better than them or similar to them starting over them. I'm sorry, but Austin is a much better player than Rui or Marcus Smart. Like he just is. And whether you want to go by the NBA rankings, whether you want to go by stats, whether you want to go by 2K, whatever measure you want to go by, like Austin is clearly the third. Some people I've already seen saying Ayton's the third guy, but like if we put perimeter guys and we're just judging perimeter guys, Austin is clearly the third best perimeter player on this team, and I don't think it's frankly close. So like, I think you're also asking him to come off the bench behind worse players who are worth less than him financially, and you're affecting his bag and his perception. Like, I just think that's a lot to ask of him. I said I wasn't going to get into it, but I did. Muad, thank you for the question here. Hey, Jovan, love your content. First time chatter. Appreciate that. Will you be shocked if the Lakers win the chip this year? I would say, I wouldn't say shocked. I would say surprised, maybe. I think when you have a player like Luka and also a combination like Luka and LeBron, I think anything's possible despite whatever limitations we believe there are with the depth or the defense. I still think they need to make a trade to really enter that upper echelon, but that's my question there. Sky Falcon says Iggy came off the bench for Clay. Odom came off the bench for Powell. Now it comes off the bench for Alan Gobert. And people want Austin coming off the bench for 30-year-old Marcus Smart. I mean, that's again, Sky Falcon, second time you made my point for me in a much more succinct manner. Rose to the top. Jovan, have you made predictions for the Lakers in terms of record, player averages, etc.? If not, when? So I would point you all to my season preview I did with Trevor Lane last week. I believe it was last week. If not, I'll just reiterate. I predicted 51 and 31, number 4 seed behind OKC, Denver, Houston. And I predicted them, as of right now, losing in the second round to OKC because OKC is OKC. But I think if they make it, but with the context of if they make a trade, I think like the right trade, I think they have a real shot to beat an OKC in a second round. I think as constructed, I would pick OKC over them in a series. Nick Baker, thank you for the super chat. Unrelated, but I'm a Bron fan in Western New York, looking to see the Lakers on this side of the country. What is the best game to go to? Boston, Philly, Cleveland, and which ones are he most likely to play in? He's going to play in Cleveland. So I like LeBron does not want to miss a Cleveland game. So I think as long as he can walk, he will play in Cleveland. So I would say that it's also the best of these three teams. So I think that's probably the best and most competitive environment. And LeBron always gets up for those games, although the Lakers did get their asses kicked at the beginning of last season in Cleveland. Then there's also, like, if I'm ranking these, I would rank it Cleveland, Boston, Philly. So Cleveland, I think LeBron, again, will do anything he can to play in Cleveland. He will try to put on a show. Cleveland's also the best team. Boston, you got the LA-Boston history, and they hate the Lakers, and they're a drunk, rowdy crowd, and that'll be a fun one. And Lakers and Celtics have had some crazy games. Going back to last year's game, where the Lakers almost won. LeBron got hurt. But there's 2 years ago where LeBron and AD missed the game, then they beat the Celtics. And there was the game where the Pat Bev camera game where LeBron clearly gets fouled at the end by Tatum, and they don't call it in end of regulation, and Pat shows him the foul on the camera, and then they end up losing the game in overtime. So like they've had some wild finishes in Boston. So I think there's like that's just always a really fun game that means more to both teams. Then I'd put Philly a distant third. Also, like from a game presentation perspective, I really don't like going to Philly in like the arena. Like their speakers are like deafeningly loud in really a negative way. Like I've seen a lot of people, like last time I was there, I put in my AirPods just for noise cancellation. And like a lot of people were putting in earplugs. Like it's like that, like actually hurts your ears pretty bad. Mo Love says AR inking that much cash with today's CBA. He's going to get at least 30. 40 might be too much, but we'll see. Matthew Wilson, realistic starting caliber 3-and-D players to trade for besides Wiggins if Pat Riley stays petty. My favorite one has been Dylan Brooks, depending on what happens in Phoenix, and I think to a lesser extent Herb Jones if everything goes off the rails in New Orleans. That'd be more of my favorite. Ernesto, I'm going to go about 5 to 10 more minutes here. We are approaching the 2-hour mark. A real 5 minutes, not a Jovan 5 minutes. More of a journalism question. How much time did you put into preparation for your questions today? I would say nothing crazy. I think like I would say media day is typically one of the times I prepare the least, because I feel like it's a lot of the same stock questions. I also think I'm constantly thinking of questions and topics per player based on the show, based on things you guys are asking or your guys' observations. So I'm like batting this stuff around my head or in my head all the time. So I feel like I'm always kind of preparing and prepared. I would say for this, I probably went through 20-ish minutes of prep last night and then another 15, 20 today. So probably like 35, 40 minutes overall. Just thinking through like topics and what I wanted to focus definitely more on like Luka, LeBron. But I think ultimately I knew I was going to come in with basketball questions. So I was like with Luka, I asked about how the big three can work together better this year. With LeBron, I asked about what he worked on this offseason, and he has consistently referenced having an area of focus. With Austin, I talked about his catch and shoot ability and how he went from about 52% of his threes in the regular season, or 52% of his shot attempts for threes in the regular season, 64% in the playoffs. That shift, like how important it is for him to be able to make catch and shoot threes and how big of an emphasis that was smart. I asked about his positional versatility defensively and how over the last couple of years he's defended up more, but the Lakers might need him to defend down more, and if he has a preference and what those conversations with JJ were like. With Ayton, I asked about his rim protection, and he was the rim protector on a team that made the finals, and like just asking about his comfortability with manning the back line and specifically within JJ's scheme and what JJ wants. Rui was the only one I kind of narrative based. I asked about the start. I was surprised no one asked him about the starting situation, so I just asked Rui about the starting lineup, if he had a preference, and sort of how he how that affects his game. And then Maxi Kleba, I asked about seeing Luka work with Brunson and Kyrie, like his thoughts on Luka working with LeBron and Austin. So those are some of the questions off the top of my head that I asked. But yeah, I mean, I try to keep it about basketball, and with all these guys, I have like a plethora of basketball questions, but definitely did some work on like, also sometimes people will ask the question you want to ask, so then you got to go to plan B, but yeah. Johnny, how does the Fred injury hurt the Rockets and affect the Lakers standings wise? I think it lowers their regular season ceiling. I think it could certainly impact, like what's interesting is for non like superstar players, and people smarter than me have better breakdowns about this, but you'd be surprised that like on paper, if you're not like a true superstar top 30, top 20 guy, like most teams can absorb an injury, and as long as they have like decent depth, can not, it'll affect them by like a few wins or something, but it's not like necessarily a 10, 15, 20 win difference. That's more of like the superstar level player. So I think they should be able to get by and still be probably a home court team. You still got KD and Şengün, and Amen Thompson is everyone's favorite pick to break out this season at like an even higher level. So if he takes a step offensively, maybe they offset that. I made the contrarian take that like I actually think it potentially puts Houston in a more playoff viable trajectory in terms of I didn't think you could close games against serious teams, against OKC, against the Lakers, against Denver with Van Vliet and Şengün out there. I felt it was 2 entry points into the defense, and you can really only afford one. And that's maybe part of a Lakers conversation here of how they navigate that with some of their defense. But I had real concerns with Van Vliet being 5'11", 6 feet tops, Şengün being a relatively limited defender. Like I even with how great the other guys are defensively that they have, like it just felt like there's a limitation there. So losing Van Vliet certainly hurts offensively, but I think they now have this weird identity where like maybe Reed Shepherd steps into a larger role and he plays some type of part in all of this, but there's a path where like their top 8 guys are all like 6'6", 6'7" and above. And that is a scary team with how much athleticism they have and versatility and just like malleability within the rotation. So there's like a weird way I feel like where this could help them sort of, but also I wouldn't be surprised if they end up trading for someone. I don't know if it's going to be a big person as in like a Derek White or something like that, but could be maybe a smaller, named player or whatever. But in terms of the Lakers, I think it opens up a door. Like I think the only teams I would argue are definitively better than the Lakers right now in the West are OKC and Denver, which opens up LA potentially being the 3 seed. Lee Baggy, a Jovan edit on Laravia body is going to feed generations this season. Thank you for the super chat. I said this on X, and some of you who follow me there might have already seen it, but like, when there's a picture of a player and it's like, don't have a bad game, otherwise we're going to post this meme. Like, I feel like Laravia is going to have a bad game and someone's going to post a photo of me, and that's going to be it. Concerned citizen, Ochai Agbaji, to a lesser degree, I'd say Terrence Mann, Zaire Williams, or Matisse Thybulle, in my opinion. Yeah, I like Agbaji. I think the jury's still out if he's a starter or not, right? Like, I think there's some uncertainty there with that. Like, I think he's a clear rotation player, and I really like him. He's one of my favorite guys. I was thinking, like, clear starter, you add this player, and they're locked into, like, 30-plus minutes a night. I don't know if you could firmly say that with Agbaji, although I think he has that upside, and I would not mind taking a swing on him at all. Man, we discussed earlier. Zaire Williams, I like. I think the shooting is a little bit of a concern there. Matisse Thybulle, I also like, but I think he's more of a bench guy than a starter. Danica asked about Marcus's health. Yeah, he said he's good to go. So everyone's healthy except for Adou. Now I see you asked the super chat. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right. I am going to wrap here. I appreciate you all so much. I will be back tomorrow after day 1 of training camp with a vlog and a breakdown of what we learned. I'm in between going live and doing just an episode. So I guess let me, if I don't go live tomorrow, I'll probably go live Wednesday. So Lakers are going to be practicing all week leading into Friday's preseason opener in Palm Springs, which I will be at. But appreciate you all. I'm also be on the lookout for the poll about the new national show and the channel. But appreciate you all. Appreciate the Late Night Gang. Thank you for tuning in. Season's here. I'm excited. You guys are all excited. A lot of stuff to cover, and I will be covering it all. So Poster King asked if I could go live at the practice arena. I could probably go live on my phone. I don't know how the audio will be, but maybe that's something I test out. Well, we'll see. That's good idea. Just have to make sure the audio is clear. I actually just got the wired headphones, so maybe I test those out and see how they sound. But appreciate you all, and thank you for watching on YouTube. Thank you for listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and your podcast platform of choice. Please be sure to hit that subscribe button, like this video, leave a comment, or if you're on the audio side, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back tomorrow. I'll talk to you all then.